Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and Happy New Year to you all if I haven't already seen you. I hope you all had a good Christmas. Nice and quiet one for me. Welcome to today's meeting of the Prosperous Staffordshire and Overview Committee. And we'll get straight on into the agenda. Item 1, apologies. Jonathan.
Received apologies, Chairman, from Graham Hutton and Peter Kruskomjic.
Thank you. Everyone else is here, aren't they? Yep. Poor Peter Kruskomjic has got COVID again, so I don't know what he's doing or who he's mixing with, but he's got it again. Okay, so item number 2 is declarations of interest. Do any members have any declarations of interest now? If you feel that you need to declare an interest as we go through the agenda, please ensure that you do that. Item 3 is the minutes of the meeting held on the 13th of December. Do we, all those that are here, are they a true record of events? Thank you, Michael. Do you have a seconder, please? Great. Philip, even. And we'll move straight on to item 4, which is the update on the preparation of the Staffordshire Local Transport Plan. And we've got Nicola, Annabelle, David and David. Okay. Oh, full house, yes. So over to you, David Williams.
Good morning, Chairman, and thank you, and Happy New Year to members as well. So I'm really pleased to bring an update on the preparation of the Staffordshire Local Transport Plan. We're recommending to the committee that you note the recent announcements from the Department of Transport, that you review and comment on the outputs and outcomes delivered during the third Local Transport Plan period, that you review and comment on the evidence base that's been collated to inform the new Local Transport Plan, and review and comment on the progress being made in preparing the Local Transport Plan. We will be writing to the Local Transport Plan during 2024, and it will be published by the end of the year. The Local Transport Plan timeline is provided in Figure 1 of the report. This will provide the basis for Staffordshire's 5-year programme of schemes, and it will also provide a long-term strategy that contains hooks for influencing future funding and enabling councils to introduce new and innovative transport solutions. The aim is going to be to maximise future levels of funding for the right transport schemes for Staffordshire. The recent Network North announcement indicates that every penny of the northern leg of HS2 will be reinvested in the Midlands and the North, and this will be additional money to the local transport, road and rail budgets allocated in the last spending review. However, it is not the case where it is just going to be, I can guarantee, that it's not starting off, as this stops to work, it's not going to be that they give us the money and it gets shared out over the 11 years as straight away. We were getting 3.1 next year, not 11.9. So the aim will be to maximise future levels of funding for the right transport schemes, as I've said, and the government is going to emphasise that funding is going to be need to use for better driving connectivity within our towns, suburbs and cities, drive better connectivity between our towns and cities, and improve everyday local journeys for people. Staffordshire's Local Transport Plan will recognise that the car is and will remain an important mode of transport in line with the Governor's recently published Plan for Drivers. However, climate change targets cannot be achieved by electric vehicles alone. Substantial energy demand reductions are needed, which is why the Local Transport Plan will also need to focus on solutions that reduce motorised transport travel. If I draw your attention to Figure 2 in the report, it summarises the breadth and scale of the schemes and initiatives that are expected to be covered by the LTP. Complementary scheme-based strategies are also being produced by officers throughout the ENS that will feed into the Local Transport Plan, and this includes all of the documents that are listed in the diagram provided in paragraph 4 and 2 of the report. In the Local Transport Plan, we will need to define deliverable measures that help to reduce the need for travel, provide options to encourage a switch to sustainable modes of travel, and improve vehicle efficiency and the quality of highway network for all road users. We will start to identify and agree the list of schemes to be included in the local transport plan over the next 6 months, and all schemes will need to be assessed against the local transport plan vision. This will happen through an officer optioneering day in March 2024, engagement with councillors and MPs to ensure that they can input and shape the local transport plan, ongoing engagement with residents through the Let's Talk Transport online portal, and ongoing stakeholder engagement through the external local transport plan surrounding group. Scheme ideas will be assessed against up-to-date existing data, including traffic flows, bus use and reliability, rail journeys, results of the 2023 Household Travel Survey, and an analysis of all types of settlements throughout Staffordshire to determine what may work well for one area but not for another. We're also working with Midlands Connect at the regional level to help determine the carbon impact of decisions that we make, tap into best practice and learn about emerging technologies and innovative solutions. We're also looking back to understand and learn from what has happened since our last local transport plan was published in 2011, and the last local transport plan had 9 objectives. Some were met and some were not. Key highlights include vehicle miles travelled in Staffordshire has increased since 2011. Bus patronage has declined significantly, especially after the COVID issues. Investment in new highways and junctions has opened up significant development sites, and investment has been made in our town centres to improve public realm and improve access. I think that's it, isn't it? I know it's a long-winded report, but there's a lot in there and there's a lot of work being going on by the officers who I have to say thank you very much to, because it is a large piece of work, but we will be making sure that this gets published by this year. Happy to have any comments or questions by members. Thanks.
Thank you, David. It is a long-winded report, but a very much needed one. And for me, it's another well-written report, which was easy to navigate. I do want to start because I've got a number of questions and nobody else has indicated yet, so I'll go first. Charlotte, I'll come to you in a minute. You mentioned about the platform for consultation. Whilst I agreed that the portal is okay, how else are we going to target residents? Because not every resident is going to go onto our portal and go, oh, look, there's the local transport plan, I'll fill that in. So that's the first one. It'll come as no surprise to you for me to ask how this strategy is going to work with and alongside the EV strategy. And whilst I understand that EV isn't the be-all and end-all, it is a major player in moving forwards. So this strategy, for me, needs to be dovetailed with the EV strategy, and how are we going to do that? How are we looking to reduce environmental impacts? As I said, EV isn't the way forward, so what else are we doing? I think we can all agree that unless we have an improvement in bus timetables when the patrons want them, then this will go nowhere, because people want to be able to get out of their cars, but at the moment they're all thinking, well, I can't use the bus because it's not running at the time I want it to do, and it's not going to the place I want it to go. How are we working cross borders? What are we doing with how are we benchmarking ourselves against other local authorities? What about place-based solutions? Do we even know what they are? And I would like to see Staffordshire as an area of excellence to build on our economy and our transport. So there's a few things for you to be going on with.
Thank you, Chairman. I will hand over to my officers who are basically working on all of that at the moment and scribbling down those questions, so they'll be able to answer those. Just on the EV point, just to reassure everybody that we are working cross-border. In fact, we are now regional with our EV strategy, so we're working with several other areas around to make sure, and that will be part of it. And I'm very fortunate that the same people who are writing this plan are also the ones who've written the EV strategy. But as you say, we are looking at what it is. I will remind as well the committee that we don't run buses. We do subsidise, and even the subsidising of that, we've only got 60% of a return at the moment of people who are on concessionary rates who are coming back. So that's something that we are trying to work with. And remind everybody that when it came to the bus revenue grant, we didn't get anything, but we have been able to make an enhanced partnership which is signed and sealed, and we are working with both companies. But I'm going to hand over to David and his team, and they'll be able to answer the other questions that you've got, Chairman.
Hi. Thank you for those questions. So the first one was about consultation. Yes, I acknowledge reaching our local communities sometimes is an issue. Obviously, we've got local councillors that can help us to reach communities and our key stakeholders. We've got a vast array of different stakeholders that we're trying to reach, from younger generations to older generations. So, yeah, we can only do what we can in the time that we've got available. And I'm thinking that we've got a reasonable spread of different ways to get to the communities that we're suggesting, but we're always open up to different solutions to sort of really engaging the public, which often can sometimes be a bit difficult, especially with such a broad breadth of topics that we're covering. And obviously we've also got to make sure that the local transport plan reflects the data and the evidence that we're collecting as an authority, rather than it just being, you know, a wish list of what the public wants. It's got to be evidence-led, because you're not going to get business cases over the line without the sort of the evidence base. So is that okay on that first question? Yeah. Yes, please, Nicola. Yeah.
There we go. If you look at the diagram in paragraph 42, this shows all the daughter documents that will sit under the local transport plan. And one of the daughter documents is a series of district transport strategies. So this will really home in on where people live and what transport solutions are going to happen in their area. So whilst the local transport plan might not be everybody's cup of tea to read because it's really high level, we'll actually be able to consult on those district strategies that are really applicable and relevant to people. They'll know the area, they'll know the schemes that we're hopefully going to talk about and raise. And then just the other thing, just going on to the question about electric vehicles, the electric vehicle charging strategy is a door-to document under the local transport plan. So if you think of the local transport plan right at the top, and then under that filters other strategies, which obviously includes the EV strategy.
So your third question was about the environmental impact. I think the whole vision for the LTP is related to the environment and carbon reduction, and I think that's going to be at the forefront in terms of protecting the environment, in terms of the sort of the schemes that we decide to deliver. So, have you got anything to add, Nicola?
I just add that going forwards, the Department for Transport will fund us compared on how well we do with reducing our carbon emissions. So if we can't, we have to calculate our carbon emissions in terms of what comes out of the tailpipe, and if that doesn't reduce, then we will get less money as compared to if we did actually drastically reduce it. So it is really important that we push the reduction in motorised transport and encourage people to travel more sustainably or even not travel. But this carbon assessment is a big part of the LTP going forward, and I don't see it going away anytime soon, because obviously we've got the 2050 carbon neutral deadline.
I'll just pick up an additional point on that. It's in the report, but we haven't received the DFT guidance on the development of the local transport plan yet. But we have a close relationship with the Department for Transport, and written into that are quantifiable carbon reductions against mitigations. So we know that for every action that we undertake through the local transport plan, we'll have to demonstrate through a quantifiable carbon reduction back to the DFT as to how we're getting to net zero.
Okay, so your next point was about buses. Obviously, I think to get that reduction in motorised journeys by car. Obviously, the bus is going to be a major solution. At the moment, obviously, our bus industry is, you know, in decline, but really, going forward, we've got to decide as an authority, really, where is the bus in this strategy, and it probably has got to play an important part for those people that can't afford, you know, electric vehicles. So I'm seeing the bus being an important part of the LTP, and I think governments seem to be sort of suggesting that, because there's a lot of money coming forward through the BSIP, the Bus Service Improvement Plan, for new services. So, you know, that's a debate that we're going to have when we're developing our programme of schemes, and obviously councillors will be involved in that discussion.
I just wanted to reiterate the point that Councillor Williams made about the enhanced partnership, insofar as a council we don't run a bus network, but in the last, I think I chaired the first enhanced partnership meeting in my first week at the council in September. So since September, we're really forging a strong relationship, or strengthening the relationship we've got with the bus operators. And as the funding starts to run through, we'll start to be able to work with the operators on how we prioritise. And I think there's a key element as well that we've discussed in the team around access, not just timetables, but actually access to things like bus stops and accessibility of the buses or the modes of public transport when we've programmed and put those in place. So again, I just wanted the committee to be assured that as well as looking at strengthening relationships with the bus industry, we're also looking at accessibility in terms of rural bus stops, footpaths, or ways you can get wheelchairs to bus stops and things like that, and then actually having the capability within the assets themselves, the buses themselves.
And if I just expand on that just slightly, is the fact that obviously with the buses as they are, when it comes to funding wise, the costs of the different types of buses are extreme. So a hydrogen bus, for example, is about £1 million, whereas an electric bus is around £200,000 compared to the others. So it is a large cost, but the infrastructure also is part of that, and being able to get the electricity to the depots where they're going to have to charge these buses. So that's something that we are looking at. But we're also looking at types of vehicle. So do they need to, being in rural areas and the numbers, do we look at, how can we look at sizes of vehicles? Do we look at smaller vehicles? And do we actually look at maybe looking at taxis and making sure that we do some sort of thing with taxis? So as part of the whole strategy, we're looking at what will fit for Staffordshire. It's not just this is the right, this works and that's it. It's got to be what's the best for Staffordshire and how will that work. And there are pluses and negatives again. Cost implications are different, but also safety implications for older people. So when you're looking at taxis, they can pick up and drop off at the house, whereas they don't have to walk up to a bus stop on their own, and they don't have to stand out in the middle of whatever weather is at their own waiting for the buses. So there are swings and roundabouts with everything, but that's the point of the strategy. We're looking at everything, making it bespoke for Staffordshire and making sure we get the right things in place, and then we'll be working with all of the different types of transport systems out there to make sure that we do get the right ones for Staffordshire.
The next question was about cross-border relationships. I would suggest that the County Council is quite strong on partnership with our other authorities in the region. We play a large part in Midlands Connect. Midlands Connect has at least 25 different authorities that feed in to research and reports in terms of what's right for the region, and we've organised a Midlands Connect Day for staff, just specifically for Staffordshire, where we're getting the Midlands Connect colleagues coming to Staffordshire to discuss, you know, what we can do at a regional level to help Staffordshire. So that's important, and we're also looking at a number of cross-boundary transport solutions. For example, in South Staffordshire, we're looking at opening up potential off-road routes that connect to the West Midlands. We're regularly in liaison with Stoke-on-Trent in terms of cross-boundary relationships with Stoke. So I think the LTP, it's very important, the cross-boundary relationships, and obviously our strategic highway network, you know, it doesn't stop at the boundaries of Staffordshire. So it's important that we understand how our trunk roads and motorways are going to work as part of our strategy, make sure that what National Highways does on the motorways doesn't negatively impact on our local roads. So it's really important to understand that, and I think that's where all the data collection that we're currently embarking on will help us to sort of understand what's going on out there outside of Staffordshire. I think your next question was about what are place-based solutions and how are we going to incorporate that into the LTP. That's a great question because I think that was sort of in our minds when we decided that we needed to look at Staffordshire in terms of how it's built up on lots of different types of settlements. We've got our sort of 6 urban areas, main urban areas. We've got some smaller towns. We've got lots of villages. We've got villages that are more connected to towns by bus and rail. So it's understanding what the solution is for different types of areas. Some settlements have local facilities, you know, that can be easily accessed by walking and cycling, but other settlements haven't. So so I think that, and obviously that will turn into place-based solutions for different types of towns and settlements.
Just to add to that, quite often the funding tranches from DFT are based on transport mode. So we're also trying to encourage the funding proposals to DFT to be a more of a place-based thing. So it's more about, let's say, for example, usage of road space. We would consider public transport, active travel, and the car user in the same space, rather than bidding for money for buses, then bidding for money for active travel separately, if that makes sense. So that's another aspect where we're looking at more of a place-based focus.
And I think I've got a final question, but I've scribbled it down and I can't read my writing.
It was in terms of, sorry, Chair, were you going to? It was area centre of excellence type stuff. I think that's what within the teams we're aspiring to, working with Councillor Williams and other departments across the council, such as James's Highways teams, to make sure that we're in the best possible place that we can be. And part of that is getting ourselves recognised through organisations like Midlands Connect as a trusted authority in a trusted area that gets things done and delivers on the funding that we're given. And that's how we will get round to being a centre of excellence and be able to share learning with other places.
Thank you very much. I'm glad I went first now. Charlotte?
Thank you. I just want to get a handle on your bus strategy, because we've seen halving of bus patronage from 2009 to 2022. And that's, I appreciate that some of that will be down to COVID, but it's very, very significant. And what I'm not getting from this plan is what your plan is to improve that take-up, because it's got now to such a low level that it needs something very dramatic to push it up again. Now, you say that you are working cross borders, but you know, if you were, as I do, I sit in North Staffordshire, the movement tends to be more east-west than north-south. And so what are the partnerships with, for instance, Stoke-on-Trent, to ensure that we get a focus on bus services going east-west? Are they just generally via Midland Connect, or is there actually a working group on buses? Because when I used to sit in DFT, Many of the ministers got very excited about trains, but actually what really matters within Staffordshire is buses. And accessible buses. I mean, we still have the ridiculous situation where parents will have to drive their kids to school behind the school bus because they can't get a vacant seat on that school bus because the bus is not accessible. So, you know, it seems to me that we're missing a trick here. If we really do want to have an environmentally positive transport strategy, then buses do have to be very much in the centre of that. So perhaps you could fill in some of the details for me on buses. I appreciate that as the county we do not deliver bus services, but many other local authorities are actively engaged in timetable planning, obviously working with operators. Because, for instance, at the moment, you know, you wouldn't be able to get a bus to Stoke-on-Trent in the evening at past 7:30, and you certainly couldn't get back after 7:30. And that puts a lot of people, younger and older people, at risk because they may be using other services which are not safe.
All good points, actually, Charlotte. And you're right, the patronage hasn't returned, but mostly in the concessionary ones that haven't returned, which is a real shame, really, because obviously it doesn't cost them money, and it's the money that the actual bus companies could get from what we get from DFT. When it comes to working with the bus companies, we're doing exactly that on timetables, on routes, but it does really come down to the fact, does the bus company feel that this is a viable route? And unfortunately, it has been the case where we've put several on in the past and looked at the numbers, and the numbers are so small that actually it's not viable for that type of vehicle. So it is something that we're trying to look at, which is why I suggested that we're looking at, are there possibilities of working with taxis in the future or with different sizes of vehicles to be able to do that. And when it does come to bus timetables, we have worked with them, and we have actually worked with the bus companies directly to look at that, and things have changed. However, again, you're quite right, it is up to them, and if the route isn't viable, if people aren't using it, it is one of those ones where we do use it or lose it, as they say. But from an authority point of view, if you remember, we asked for 100. We thought we were being quite ambitious, asking for £113 million from DFT when it came for the original BSIP, and we actually got zero. And we were told we weren't ambitious enough. And as part of that, we had planned to upgrade bus stops so that it was more feasible, that the timetables were there, that they were more up to date with digital connectivity. There was issues for safety and lighting. It was looking at how people access the buses to remove as many of the barriers as we can. But again, we're still doing that. We're still working with the bus companies, and there is going to be a second BSIP. We will be applying for what we can get out of that, and we will see. And I know that we've had some monies returned, which are going to be able to be funding some electric buses and some of the infrastructure, but nowhere near the whole of them. And it is something that we're looking at. What's the best use for them? Where will they be able to use? Obviously, town centres are the ones where they're more viable because of the fumes around and the buildings. So if I can just assure you that there's a lot of that work going on. It is just a shame that unfortunately our concessionary fares have not returned, and they are. But there's only one area that actually has changed, in the fact that Cannock is the only one that's actually got better patronage there than it did prior to COVID. So there are some areas that are taking it up, but as you say, it is unfortunate that others aren't.
I'm just going to mention one particular service called Morelands Connect, which is, of course, a fantastic service, but, you know, very few people know about it, and therefore it's not used. And it's, you know, it's not just important for local residents, it could be really important for tourism. And, you know, it's just one of those little known things, and it's because people don't trust the bus service because they need to know that they can get back. And if they can't get back, then they won't go. And, you know, those are the sort of issues. And it just seems to me that we should be doing much more to promote buses as being a sustainable type of transport, and to ensure and to reassure people that it's a safe mode of transport as well. It certainly is. It's certainly much safer, you know, than perhaps, you know, getting an Uber or some such thing. because obviously you've got professional drivers and you've got other people on the bus. So I think that we really need to look at the strategy, but also work much more closely with our neighbours, not just with Midlands Connect, but with other councils that have a similar objective to improve connectivity between the towns within and just outside Staffordshire.
David?
Thank you, Chairman. I'm sorry if I go on, but I've got 5 items to raise, so I apologise. Chairman, as you're well aware, I represent an extremely rural area, and so that comes with its problems that are different from perhaps the urban areas are. I look particularly at the problems of cycleways, which I thoroughly support, but I don't look at the lanes in my division, which are heavily used by cyclists, but are not wide enough to have any special provision. And so we end up travelling behind a group of cyclists where there's no opportunity to pass, and that's something that we will need to address as time goes by, but I don't see a solution for how we can deal with that. I'm disappointed to a degree that there isn't more about rat running. My division suffers very, very badly from the problems of rat running, and if you reduce rat running, you reduce the damage to rural roads, which are very susceptible to potholes and edge collapsing. And so if we were dealing with the one problem, we start to ease another one. And when you start to go on from there, you end up with the sort of problems that we have where we're talking about working together with adjoining authorities. From an officer point of view, in my division, we have a major problem. The officers met and didn't recognise the problem because the data which we maintain is not recording minor accidents. Yet we're having daily minor accidents on a road which we share with Walsall. The road falls into Walsall's responsibility. Walsall said that they were not going to do anything about it. But fortunately, the leader of Walsall Council happened to be a witness to one of the accidents, and he is backing the work which we're doing from a local point of view on how we can actually make improvements to that road. But I'm disappointed that it didn't come forward as a serious issue as far as we're concerned with our officer team here. I'm also interested to know some parish councils are currently in the process of producing neighbourhood plans. I'm the chairman of my local neighbourhood plan working group, and I'm content that what we will do will conform with what's possible, particularly on highways, with Staffordshire's highway policy. But I was at a parish council meeting this week where the neighbourhood plan would appear to be incorporating all sorts of proposals for what's going to happen as far as the highway is concerned. And from my point of view, if there's been no consultation between the parish council and the county council, and I certainly don't sit on either of these groups, then they're putting things into their neighbourhood plan which are not financially deliverable. And I think perhaps we need to be aware of that. I'm also disappointed that in paragraph 13, there is no reference whatsoever to Lichfield South development. This is a £20 million high-tech development which is coming forward to planning this month. It has high-tech manufacturing units proposed, which are unique to the county. It has a new head office building, which is the only building of its type which is probably going on in the country, let alone Staffordshire. It also has charging points for electric vehicles, and I'm horrified to see that the National Grid are proposing to charge over £2 million to complete the connection to a charging centre. And I hope that BP, who are building the charging centre, feel that they're big enough to be able to challenge that and do something about it. I would also, and just lastly, just mention, an officer, as part of some discussions with me, was looking at a bus stop problem that we have as far as Lichfield South is concerned, where the bus stop drops off into a muddy puddle in an entrance to a field. Now, as part of this development at Lichfield South, we're looking at how we can tackle that, and the result is that the developer is now making a contribution of £100,000 to move 2 bus stops. That seems to me to be absolutely extortionate, but had the developer not agreed to the £200,000, they would have blocked the planning application and a £20 million development would not have gone ahead. I find that very disappointing. And then lastly, as an officer's suggestion, and I've raised this with the leader, an officer has made a proposal that information panels at bus stops would raise sufficient revenue from advertising to not only produce the latest data on what's happening to a bus, but would also provide sufficient revenue for the maintenance of all of the bus stops across the whole of the county. And I don't understand why that went to our previous chief executive and he was prepared to support it, and it somehow disappeared into the ether. And so if from today's meeting we can actually do something about trying to wake that up again, it would be very, very useful. Thank you, Chairman. Thanks for your patience.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. When it comes to cycleways, you're quite right. The lanes don't enable themselves under the current regulations to have cycleways put on them, and unfortunately, you, not only yourself but ourselves can't see any actual ways around that with the current way things are funded and the current regulations around putting them in. It's not saying that we won't look at things and we aren't putting them in other places, and as I remind everybody, when we put applications in for any developments or any funding, active travel is always part of that, and we do put cycleways in wherever we can, even though people don't think that it's relevant. Unfortunately, it is the only way that we ever actually can apply for funding as we go. When it comes to rat running, unfortunately, I get where you're coming from, but it is one of the things where people will find the easiest routes when it comes to travelling through areas, and if they are a legal vehicle and they are travelling at the right speeds, then actually they're not breaking any laws, so it's difficult to do anything different with that. But we have put in different roads, we have put in bypasses in Lichfield, example, to prevent rat running in certain areas. So, you know, we're always looking to do things in the right ways and help with that. When it comes to minor accidents, I understand it doesn't get recorded, so it's very difficult for us to comment, but it is more of a local thing there, and I suggest that that's where you work with the local highways teams to look at those. Similarly, with the parish and neighbourhood plans, when that comes in, now those are county and borough, district and borough functions, when they're looking at highway plans and what they need. When it comes to the highway part itself, if James will be able to back me up, that we look at the accessibility and the safety part of where the development is going to be and its access to the highway network. And apart from that, we don't really, unless we need something, actually say that. But at the time when you're looking at districts and boroughs and they're doing the planning applications, that's the time when we should be addressing any issues on the development. Similarly with that bus stop, like you say, that's a district and borough function to say it, because just to reiterate, we do not own all the bus stops. They're owned by parish councils, they are owned by district and ourselves and the bus companies. So it depends on who and where they're going to be, and also it depends on whether the buses actually want to stop there or not, which is something completely different. But when it does come to moving or planning for developments, it usually comes down to the districts and boroughs to do that. I can't comment on your single charging centre, but I can understand from discussions we've had with our utility companies that actually getting the utility to the area for that type of development, a huge charging bank, it will not be cheap and will be very, very, very expensive and technical. So I think I can understand certain costs coming on that, and that's where we're looking at working with the EV strategy and what sort of funding is available from government to do that. And you are right about the Office of the Information Panels, but we are putting those out. They are working already. We are starting to get some income, but it's nowhere near enough to be able to say that it'll do all of our bus stops at all. In fact, at the moment the take-up is low for advertising, but it was a great scheme and we're looking at doing it, and it will also therefore run onto the same things we were talking about previously, where we're saying that it will put on where the bus is, what time is it late, is it due, information on bus timetables, as well as advertising. But remembering that we have to make sure we're advertising the right things, that we have to with the companies that we're working on. So it is something that we're doing, but it isn't something we can just roll out across the board. There is a lot of technical parts that go with that, as well as the connectivity and where it is from the topography level.
Could I just come back and have an assurance that where we are naming business development sites, that in future Lichfield South, which is a major development, is included within the data that we put out? It's not in item 13 and it should be there, and so can I have an assurance that it will be in future? Thank you, Chairman.
Chairman, just to reiterate, item 13 is the ones that have been done, not are going to be done. So just to reiterate, that's why it's not in 13. Those are the ones that we have completed.
Can I just make a comment about neighbourhood plans? The connectivity strategy team, one of our main roles is to feed into the local plan process, and obviously neighbourhood plans are part of the planning process. So I think through the local transport plan, we need to make sure that we understand that where developments are proposed, that it's important that they're put into sustainable locations, and I suppose that's part of our role in our team, is to make sure we get that land use and transport integration on policy. And we do have the opportunity in our transport team to comment on neighbourhood plans, and obviously we're the team that are writing the local transport plans, so there are opportunities for us to sort of feed into neighbourhood plans, and we also feed into local plans.
Thank you, Annabelle. Sam? You've forgotten what you wanted to ask now, haven't you?
I have forgot, sorry. One was just to go back to Tina's point. I forgot her name as well, sorry. Sorry, Tina. Was, you say about the communication and how you're going to feed it into the communities, and have you thought about asking parish councils, because they do send a lot of newsletters out to residents, so it may be worth taking that on board, that they could perhaps help you with that?
So one thing I didn't mention is we do actually have an external sounding board made up of stakeholders, including neighbouring local authorities. The Parish Councils Association are on there, and they've already offered to do that. So we already are linked up, and hopefully they will. Yeah.
Thank you. And the other thing was, just to go back to the buses again, I find our bus route very, very negative, our bus company very negative, and to try and talk to them about bus routes and about concerns that the residents have about not being picked up or missed, and the children going to school, I find them very negative. So if there's any opportunity that I can come into any meetings where you do meet the actual bus company, look at David's face, it would be appreciated, because I feel that our residents in my area are very shortchanged over their bus routes.
If we're doing anything around your area, we'll make sure you're involved.
Philippa?
Sorry, all I was just going to add was I'll pick that up at the enhanced partnership with the operators as well.
I've not forgot what I wanted to ask, so you're all right. I'm just wondering if we've got any data of how many people actually use the cycle lanes that we put in, like the ones through Cannock in particular, and what their feedback of them are with regards to how they work with the road layout and pedestrians and how the crossings are having an impact. For the communications in our area, I think it's really positive that we put out that good message, what we're trying to achieve with regards to getting people more active travel. And I don't think that always comes across into the community, and I think that's a area that we definitely need to work on. So however we work with the communications, I as a local member really want to get that out there, but I also want to know what our residents think of what we're doing. So anything that we can do to help improve on the consultation with our community, I'd be a great supporter of, and seeing what they think of. Even the feedback now, say for Cannock, and what they actually think of that cycle lane going forward for other areas. Is that, you know, something that we can look at? And with regards to sort of active travel and the pavements, we've got a few developments across the Cannock Chase district that have had housing estates built, but then you leave the housing estate to no pavement. We need to be able to link those homes and the residents onto the network so they can actually walk, they're not straight onto a main road, or they can cross a road safely. And I think that's where it comes back down to either the highways team working with the local members and feeding that back, or vice versa, so we can all tell you where we've got our hotspots and where we can link people back up so they can benefit from walking into the town centre or onto the bus network.
If I just take the second one first, it is down to districts and boroughs when they're looking at where they're going to allow planning for developments to happen. Now, the officers from the highways will quite happily work with local members and districts and boroughs and the developers to look at where the access is and what they can go to. But unfortunately, obviously, they don't give me give highways the money to say, oh, you're putting a development there, you can put a path in as well. But it has worked in the past, and I know in Penkridge that we've done it where there's the Borough Homes one, and that had an extension and an improvement to the pathways itself from that development. So it is really at the early stages of districts and boroughs where they can actually make most of that impression. When it comes to the actual uses, I know that there is negativity around the ones that we've put in Cannock. I even know that there's certain councillors who want to extend it all the way up to different islands and make it, or in fact, all the way through to Brood. Burntwood. And I applaud the fact that we want to do more. It is a perception thing, but just to reiterate that if we don't put in for these, when we actually do apply for funding, we don't get in through the first round. And similarly, I know in Cannock we'll have quite a bit of active travel going around on enough money. So that's something that I'm really happy about. But obviously, people do have their own things, and I'll leave it to Annabelle, who's the cycling guru, to talk about statistics. But I do think it is one of those things where, yeah, there is negativity out there, but it has to be framed with the fact that we've got that funding because of that as part of the scheme. And if we didn't have that, we wouldn't get any funding, and the whole thing wouldn't be done.
Yeah, so on the first point was about are we collecting data on usage. So yes, on every route we have cameras set up through a company called Viva City. And we've just started, obviously we've not still collecting the data, but we've started to look at it, and there are issues, that we need to look at and lessons learned, because we've put in 4 quite big, complex cycle schemes throughout the county. What the problem is that is trying to get the message out that this is just these are one short links, and there's a bigger plan to do the next link and to link it, and for the understanding of why we've put this small link in. So what we're doing in that is that we've got an active travel communications officer, and she's working at the moment on producing some flyover videos that might present the next steps. So when we did the original consultation, we did the flyover videos of that section, but we're now going to try and do a more of a wider video to explain why this section has been put in. Obviously, I think over time, hopefully the usage will get up as the more infrastructure we put in. So that's on cycling. And then in terms of developments, obviously we're trying to establish a Staffordshire Highway Design Code that will help in determining how developers identify their walking and cycling links within the developments. And we've also got Active Travel England now that's supporting us on, they're also providing comments to district councils on future planning applications. So they're a sort of national body that are also trying to get developers to do things differently. And sort of we're involved in Active Travel England as well in trying to make sure that our next schemes tie into those developments, and we try and make sure we don't just do a scheme to the edge of the development, that we continue that on. I think that's what we're going to be doing that soon for Rugeley Power Station. We're going to make sure that we've designed up in our project pipeline for walking and cycling schemes these key corridors that are needed.
Just on an extra one on that, we're actually also working with other people like National Highways. So as part of the M54 link, there is an actual cycle route that they will be paying for that goes all the way from Featherstone all the way through, and we're looking how we can see if we can extend that with some of the funding that might come from that, and that would actually then link Featherstone to Cannock, carry on down to Gailey and off to Penkridge. So there are things in place that are being looked at and have been designed, but it is always a case where, being a more rural area, we don't attract the type of funding that we would like, but that's not going to deter us from trying to obtain that funding where we can.
David, I just want to come back on something you've just said about, and Annabelle's just said. I always find the highways response to planning applications too generic. They don't tell us when they visited, at what time and what the weather was like. It's just we have no issues. That's what's normally on the report. And just going back to what Philip has just said about linking up new estates onto main roads with pavements, we've got an estate in Tamworth that built 2 estates together with a piece of grass in the middle and no link. The path just stopped halfway up. We're 16 years down the line and we've still got no path to link the 2 estates that go to the same place. So I'll have a chat with you after that, after today, because I think 16 years is a bit of a long time to wait for a footpath. David, did you want to come back in briefly?
Just a couple of points, if I may, Chairman. I did at one stage have the planning officer on highways, where we were looking as consultants on a planning application on highways, that this should be referred to the local member for comment, even if it's no more than a phone call. We've got a number of things that have happened that have been problems within my division through lack of consultation on highways to do with local issues. And I really would urge, if we can, for planning officers that are looking at comments on on applications would check with the local member just to see what they need to do. And following on from that, I've got 10 years of data on the movement of vehicles by weight, speed, time of day. All of that information I have got, which is supplied to Lichfield District Council and is a consideration as far as planning applications are concerned. But I just wonder how far that goes into the highway departments when they're looking at issues within the local area. Chairman.
Thank you, Dale. I know that district members and borough members are always contacted when there's developments in their area, but fortunately I do have somebody who might be able to tell us more about the part with developmental and highways. James?
Sorry, wrong one. Yeah, thank you. I'm trying to think where to start with this. I think the first bit is in terms of the local engagement with the member. Absolutely, every opportunity we can try to do that. Very, very happy to try and do that. The procedure at the moment is more about the experienced officers trying to use their antenna to know when is the right time to engage with the local member. Likewise, if the local members are aware of certain developments that are going through the planning process that are on the local authorities, district councils, borough councils, planning portals, if you flag up that there's one that's particularly sensitive that you'd like to know about, please do contact your local highway officer as well, so that we can make sure that we engage around that. The challenge is we only have 21 days to respond, and that's quite a difficult thing to be able to do. We have about 4,500 applications every year to deal with and 21 days response time. So that is a challenge, and it'd be very, very difficult to engage with the local member on every single one. And it's everything from small, minor access points to major strategic development. So again, it's a bit of an officer antenna, but also if the local members are aware of things through the planning portals, that there's particular ones they're interested in, then please do shout up and they'll endeavour to engage on that. Of course, though, the mitigations around development is about mitigating the impact of the development. It's not about asking the developer to solve existing problems. We have to operate within the limitations of the National Planning Policy Framework to do that. So I just say that in terms of a kind of expectation management. We can't lean on private developers to solve existing problems.
And just a quick one, the National Planning Policy Framework has just changed. So there are going to be a lot of differences out there. So it's just something that members need to be aware of.
Could I just... I don't find the fact that we have 4,000 applications very relevant. It's applications where there are difficult highway issues that we need to consider. In my division, we lost a planning appeal because we didn't submit the right information at the right time, and that was very, very frustrating. And I have a development of several hundred
Councillor
houses.
Smith, I think we're diverting from today's agenda, which is the local transport plan.
Well,
so if you want to take those up with Councillor Williams
I'm
afterwards.
simply making the point that the number of planning applications is not that relevant. We're talking about those with critical highways issues that need to be resolved. Thank you, Chairman.
James, if you want to have that conversation with Councillor Smith afterwards. If there are, oh, sorry, Philip.
Thank you, Chair. Team, I don't envy you with the amount of work that you're going to have to do over this. It's a massive amount of work to take on. When we look at road safety, I know that in Staffordshire we've had over 40 fatal accidents last year. And I notice in your report the Mitre Crossroads, well, I was a police officer that spent many unhappy hours there dealing with fatal accidents, and I know the amount of work that went in. We need to work very closely with the Safer Roads Partnership, because a lot of the time it isn't the engineering that's needed here. Mitre Crossroads, the amount of work that was done there cost thousands of pounds, and the loss of a life is unmeasurable. However, all the engineering that went into it, they still have accidents, and I just don't understand why, because there's so much warning there, so many signs up, you know, the junction's quite open and you can see, so it's not just about engineering. And I think that a lot of the, I mean, I know some of the facts of some of the accidents we've had last year in Staffordshire, and it's driver error, not engineering, that will put that right. So we need to make sure that we're working more closely with Staffordshire Roads Partnership, particularly the police, about looking at driver error. You know, I notice, I mean, I'm a fellow of the Institute of Advanced Motorists, and I notice in my riding that people are now braking very late coming up to junctions, so if something goes wrong, they can't plan. When we're coming up to junctions, they're not planning what they're doing, and there's too much going on in the cars and vehicles, they're not concentrating. So that's just one thing there. So, you know, I understand that. There's a lot of work to be done to keep our roads safe. In Uttoxeter, it's mainly a commuter town now, and so a lot of people work in the town. We've got all these big developments that on the edges of the town for people to come and live there. So it's we have to make sure that our roads are accessible to our residents to get them to where they're going safely. The main problem I've got is that the main network through Uttoxeter wasn't built for the amount of road that we have now. It wasn't built for the heavier lorries that we have coming through. It wasn't built for these heavy electric vehicles that we have. And so there's a lot of work going to have to be done in the future to make our road network future-proof. We've done an excellent job on the Waitrose Island, David. Thank you for that. But there's a lot more got to be done. And what annoys me is that we don't talk so much about hydrogen. So I know for a fact that a local company, JCB, are now introducing hydrogen engines that we can put into vehicles. I know for a fact that our farmers will have to have hydrogen engines in the tractors and the agricultural thing that they do. Okay, it might cost £1 million for a hydrogen bus, but I think it's going to be a lot easier to run in the future. than electric vehicles, because we've proved that we haven't got the network to charge them all up. If something goes wrong overnight in a particular area, how are we going to get these vehicles charged up and out there? So I don't think we should put all our eggs in one basket, because I'm certain the future isn't just going to be electric. I think that hydrogen is going to be a big part of it, and I keep pushing it. I mean, I'm aware now that some bloke has developed an engine to fly planes using human excrement, so who knows what the future's going to bring. So we need to look at the road networks, need to get them future-proof. Bus services, more or less non-visible in your Toxicity these days. They keep reducing it all the time. I had some parking restrictions put down a certain road in the town that cost us thousands of pounds to work in partnership with the bus company. They're refusing to put the buses back down there. So how can I deal with that? So that's something I'll take up with David privately. And when you live in a rural area, so we come to Stafford quite a bit to the theatre. I couldn't come using a bus and there's no trains that will get me here. I can't get a bus here and back, so I have to use my car. And you know, if I had a taxi, it would cost me £20–30 each way. So that's, you know, that's out of the question. So you've got a lot of work on, and I'm looking forward to watching what's going on over the years here. I feel that the government really should start making electric vehicle users pay tax, because you know they use the roads as much as we do, and we need to you know, we need money, and our county needs money to do the work on our roads. And where's it going to come from? It comes from the government, and you know, we need to do that. Thank you.
Thank you, and you're quite right about certain types of drivers. I've been in the fire service for so many years myself. It was strange that they usually get the accident, and some of the worst accidents were on the most boring parts of the M6. Not anything where there's a curve or anything else. It is a strange one. Drivers do drive very differently. The roads were never designed for the volume of traffic that we've got now, similarly with housing estates, and not forgetting the weight of the vehicles, especially those darned electric ones that are a lot heavier. But remembering that the HGVs that are now electric, they're 13 tonnes extra without any putting anything in the back. So those are going to damage the roads. You're quite right. Happy to discuss other things out of this meeting, but you are when it comes to buses and so forth, we are trying to do what we can, but we are limited in what we can do. But we're trying to influence as much as we can.
Thank you, David. If there are no further comments or questions, we've got 4 recommendations that David read out at the start. Note the recent announcements by the DFT. Review and comment on the outputs and outcomes delivered during the 3rd local transport plan period. Review and comment on the evidence base. And review and comment on the progress being made in preparing the new LTP. I can't say it. Are we all in agreement with those recommendations? Thank you very much. Seconder Michael. Thank you. Thank you, David, Annabelle, David and Nicola. You're free to leave now. And we'll welcome Tim and Emily. You can stay, David. You love this meeting. So we'll move straight on to item 5, ladies and gents, which is the Lighting for Staffordshire update and energy framework proposal. David?
Apologies for having to have my voice again, but I'm really pleased to be able to bring this report to the committee. I think this is a really positive one, and I would hope that the committee will feel the same. Street lighting is a significant and important asset here in Staffordshire, and there are many benefits from having high-quality streeting assets, including improving road safety, enhancing public safety, and the promotion of community well-being, especially where there's well-lit public spaces that contribute to a sense of security, promote social interaction, and particularly nighttime economy. We have over 108,000 street lighting assets in Staffordshire, which include lighting columns, lit traffic signs, illuminated bollards, subway lighting, and so on. And since 2003, the assets have been managed and invested through a private PFI, private finance initiative, with the aim of improving the asset condition, making them more reliable and more energy efficient. The annual performance report sets out the Scrutiny Committee, the progress and performance of the street lighting PFI currently, And the street lighting is also one of the council's largest users of energy. It also sets out therefore how, in accordance with the council's climate change action plan, we are reducing energy consumption, decarbonising the service that we provide and securing a new energy supply for the future. I look forward to an interesting discussion with members and appreciate in advance the valuable input from the members of the committee. And I'll hand over to Tim and Emily, who will present the details of the report. And before I do, just to thank them for all of the work they've done on this. It's a lot of work again, but really important both to us for our users, but also with our decarbonisation and our green climate targets.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Tim Hemmensley, Head of Projects and Technical Services. So with the report, just talking about the background of the PFI contract. So it was established in May 2003. It was Lighting for Staffordshire Limited was set up and began delivering the street lighting PFI contract. And that's a 25-year contract that's set to conclude in May 2028. E.ON Energy Solutions Limited are the appointed service provider, and they deliver all aspects of the street lighting service in Staffordshire. And then there's a small and dedicated team of officers that monitor the performance of the contract. The contract value at commencement was £250 million, and that was supported by a revenue support grant of £1.54 million per annum. And the current spend is around £17 to £18 million every year. About £6 to £7 million of that is the energy aspect of the contract. And obviously that has fluctuated within the last 2 years due to the rise in energy costs. So it's a significant element. The contract was revised and amended in 2012, and that was to recognise its changes in technology, such as LED lanterns, and provide further value for money. So some of the reasons, challenges and aims of the contract. So the PFI contract was initially brought in to address a lack of investment over many years. And the street lighting assets back in 2003 were in a real poor state and poor condition. There was 24% of assets at that time that were at risk of failure. There's been a continuous asset renewal program since that time. So there's like in 5-year blocks, we've been renewing the assets. So rather than a big bang, do everything all at once or within a short space of time, there's been a continuous improvement in the asset. And that helps us going forwards in future. So as those assets need renewal again, they don't all come to the end of their life at the same time. The asset has grown by nearly 9% over the life of the contract, and a lot of that's been down to development. But at the same time, the lighting standards have started to relax in some areas. So you might see there's fewer lit bollards now on the highway network, and street lighting on signage has relaxed for certain signs as well. So we are, where we can, removing illumination where it's not required anymore. As we approach the latter stages of the contract, we started preparing and planning for the contract end and what future arrangements we might be moving to. As part of that, the Infrastructure and Projects Authority conducted a 7-year health check, and we scored amber in that, and that was really helpful. It gave us a number of actions that we need to carry out to make sure that we are ready for the end of the PFI, and we're working our way through those. Part of the preparation for the end of the contract is around a reversion report, a handback report, and this needs to be completed 27 months prior to the contract expiry, and that will involve an independent engineer certifier to check all of the lighting assets and give us a report and an assessment of the condition of those assets, allowing us to plan for the future, what needs replacing and when, and the likely costs of that at the point of handover. And we're currently in discussion with Lighting for Staffordshire around that. And we will be coming back to the committee in future with proposals and recommendations for the post-PFI arrangements at some point in the near future. In terms of governance arrangements, we have a Lighting for Staffordshire project board, and that oversees the high-level governance of the contract. The day-to-day activities are a collaboration between ourselves and E.ON to ensure that the delivery of the contract is satisfactory. We have monthly contract review meetings, we have annual performance reports, there's also annual external and internal audits to ensure compliance. Within the council's audit team provides periodic evaluations, and the last audit that was carried out internally was in 2016-2017. It's to be confirmed, but we may have a further audit this coming financial year on the PFI. So again, that will be confirmed in due course. And at this point, I'll hand over to my colleague Emily, if you want to introduce yourself and just highlight the key points around the performance of the PFI and the energy framework.
Hello, I'm Emily Madsen. I'm the Lighting and ITS Manager for Staffordshire County Council. Progress and the performance summary. So the asset renewal programme that E.ON are carrying out at the moment, it's currently on target, which is great news. We had a slight decline last year, unfortunately. This was due to COVID impacts and sickness and staff attrition. But yeah, I was really pleased to see we kept on at them and they did manage to catch up in time. I didn't think they were going to, but they did in the end. So I was really pleased with the outcome of that. They worked really hard. General maintenance. So since the start of the contract, our faults have actually reduced by 50%, and this is just due to advanced technology and like our asset renewal works that we're doing. At any one time, we've got 99.8% lights lit. So that just shows, you know, how robust that our assets are and how well that they're being maintained. And we've got a 98% customer satisfaction score currently. Additional achievements. So we have got, we did a contract modernisation in 2013. Now, this was off the back of the credit crunch in 2008-2009. They wanted to have a look at high value contracts to ensure that there were value for money. This has actually saved us since 2013 to September 2023, £5.6 million. In regards to projects that we're looking at the moment, you might be familiar that we're doing a phase 1 on our investor save. So that's upgrading street lighting to LED. So the first phase was 38,278 assets, and this is saving us, will forecast to save us £2 million per annum. We're due to finish that project in May 2024, which will be 10 months ahead of the programme. And due to the success of this and how much energy it's saving, we have been provisionally approved for a phase 2 of our Investor Save programme. We're just waiting for confirmation through the MTFS for that. And that will be for an additional 13,900 assets, which will cost £4.6 million with a payback over 4 years. So that concludes the Lighting for Staffordshire update. I'll just move on now to the Energy Framework Procurement Approval. So the objective of the Energy Framework procurement is we need to seek the committee views on continuing to utilise the Crown Commercial Services Energy Framework for street lighting and intelligent transport system assets. And this contract will run from April 2024 to March 2028. So there's an importance of central purchasing bodies for energy procurement in the public sector due to buying energy in bulk and flexible pricing. So as Tim mentioned earlier, we pay around £6.9 million on energy alone just for street lighting and ITS assets. So it's one of the largest energy consumptions for the council. By using a framework, it makes it more stable, especially with the volatility of energy prices over the last few years. It enables the pricing to be a lot less and more structured. I'm not an energy expert myself, so I've had a lot of talks with people who are, so the commercial team and also the Entrust Energy management team as well. So I speak to them quite regularly just to ensure that what we're doing is correct. Legal implications. So we follow, the framework does comply with public contract regulations 2015. and it ensures adherence to legal standards in the procurement process. Resource and value for money implications. So, like I've just said about the volatility of the market, there was a lot that saw 300 to 400% increase in energy. So, by using a framework, it does help the pricing. So, Crown Commercial services have shifted their purchasing strategy due to the issues with the energy over the past few years. So they are now using a risk profiling model, which enables the prices to be a lot more secure and ensures the supply to be bought. Climate change implications. So we have a commitment to buy 100% green energy. We get a REGO certificate through that. So REGO stands for Renewable Energy Guarantees of Origin. So that's what will be provided once we have the framework all set up in place. So the way this links to the strategic plan, so through the investor save and buying of the 100% green energy, this links to the climate change actions within that's set out in the plan, so to reduce carbon emissions. The asset replacement and the ongoing maintenance activities that we have will improve highways, which will achieve value for money. And with the use of new LED technologies and sourcing the best framework also contributes to value for money as well. I'll just pass back to Tim.
Okay, thank you. So the requests to the committee are to consider and scrutinise the update of the contract performance for the PFI, and secondly to support the approach for procuring, awarding and entering into a new energy framework contract. Thank you, Chair.
And thank you both. And just to reassure the committee again, this is an investor save. It pays itself back and continues to do so. It also reduces the amount of carbon we're doing. I can't remember the figure off the top of my head, but it's a huge amount of tons of carbon that we'll actually be saving, as well as that. And the changeover to LED street lighting has also now aided a lot of the light pollution that people complain about. It's very much directed onto the roads. There can be issues where it comes too close or different things to buildings, but they've worked that issue and that can be changed to the angle, and there can be guards. I think the contract is a real positive and has been shown to do that, and the fact that it will pay for itself and reduce our carbon and continue to give us energy savings for the future, as well as the procurement of that, I think is a real positive, and I commend it to the committee.
Thank you, David, Tim and Emily. Well done, Emily, on your first Prosperous. David Smith.
Thank you, Chairman. I have to say street lighting isn't a big issue in my division. But I just got a query that perhaps you may help me with on the one issue that I have had, where we're talking about replacement of existing lighting. I have an estate where a particular style of lighting had been installed from the original planning of the site. That came up for replacement, and I have no idea whether it was going to be replaced like for like or whether my intervention had any influence at all. But I was interested to ask the question, why we are not able to upgrade existing lighting poles rather than to replace. And I'm sure there must be a very sensible reason why, but it seemed that maintenance and upgrading would have been an answer and would be a cost saving. Thank you, Chairman.
Yeah, so just to respond to that, and Councillor Smith, so the first phase of Investor Save that put LED lanterns on existing street lights, we picked, I suppose, the easier ones and the higher powered assets to tackle first. But there are other assets where, so I'll take an example where we've got in some town centres decorative street lighting poles that will require a different solution. So In the first phase, we've tackled a certain type. In the second phase of Investor Save, we will then move on to some other types of street light, and that some of the ones like in your estate, for example, might fall into that category. But it's just some of the different styles of street lighting poles, effectively, that we have, and lanterns that we have in place that dictate what some of the solutions are to replace them. Sometimes it's dead easy, sometimes it's as simple as a new lantern on an existing pole. Other times there's more complex reasons why we can't do a straight swap. But it's a technical issue that it comes down to. I don't know if Emily wants to add some more to that.
Yeah, so I think your question was more around like replacing, repairing the pole, the existing pole. Is that correct? So there's two different programs that we're running. So the Investor Save, what Tim was just talking about, we're only replacing the lantern on top of the column, so those columns will stay in situ. On the asset replacement program, we are replacing the whole lot, and that's due to the column age and condition. So all of the columns are structurally tested. I think it's every 3 years. So we do test that. So if the column is okay, then we do keep it. But as part of the PFI and the arrangements through the PFI, with the asset replacement program, the whole of the column is replaced. So I think that's what you were asking in regards to why aren't we just reusing, and it's to do with concrete columns as well. So concrete columns, we will have some left at the end of the PFI. They're not as strong as the steel ones, but yeah, there's two different projects going on, and that's why we do what we do. Does that answer your question? Yeah.
Thank you. Charlotte.
Thank you. I just wondered whether, when you look at, obviously I appreciate you're talking about LED lights being much more focused, but have you considered in certain appropriate locations closing down the lights completely overnight to reduce light pollution? Certainly if you go abroad, you know, you're met with this amazing array of stars because you don't have the light pollution which we regularly have in our country. So that's the first question. And the second question is about the concerns that many estates have when their roads are not adopted. It means that they have to wait years for their lighting to be installed, upgraded, repaired. And, you know, what can be done when, you know, literally an estate can be waiting 10 years for roads to be adopted. And lighting is important to that estate, both in terms of safety and the feeling of security. So what is being done to try and overcome that problem on so many estates where lighting cannot be replaced because obviously the contractor or the developer is not responding to residents' needs?
So the answer to the question about LED lights, and whether we're going to turn them off completely, this isn't something that we've been requested to do currently. We're not looking to do that just from a safety perspective. I am looking quite closely across the industry and seeing other authorities that are doing it. I would like to do in the future some kind of comparison to see whether it's safe at night, energy savings. What we are doing, just to let you know, we do something called dimming. So we dim the lights quite heavily, like right up until the standards. So, and I know that has saved us a lot of money over the past. So we aren't completely turning them off, but we are dimming them from certain times. So I think it's from like 8 till 12, it's like 75% dimmed, and then from 12 till 6, it's 50% dimmed. So we are having a huge saving from that. But yeah, I am looking quite closely at the whole industry just to see what other authorities are doing.
And I think just on that point as well, that would probably be for the council to make a decision, a policy decision on whether that was pursued or not, following whatever we put forward. On the second point, I have a lot of sympathy for that scenario that you paint. However, whilst an estate isn't adopted, it still sits outside of the council's jurisdiction to maintain and look after that estate. So I think that's where councillors and others, MPs, can play a part in putting pressure on those contractors to resolve whatever issues there are. But they're just, I think we have to protect the public purse as well, that until those lights are brought up to the correct standard, that we can't take them over and get involved until that is resolved and sorted. Because otherwise we're opening ourselves up to the liabilities then as a council, aren't we? Okay.
Just on that, I know that E.ON, our PFI contractor, are used as third party to go and fix those lights on behalf of the developer. So I know in instances we have had residents come to us because they're not sure that if the road's adopted or not. That's half the time they don't even know what that means. So they're coming to us complaining about it, and then we're letting them know that it's the developers, you know, it's their responsibility. And if we know that we've got third-party works with them, E.ON do sometimes get in contact with them.
And I think just on that, if you're aware of any new developments being built, then get your recommendations into your planning departments for street lighting and make sure they're LED. Right from the outset. Philippa?
Thank you. Mine's just a quick question with regards to the illumination. How do we determine how bright they have to be? A lot of the area at the minute that I can see is having the new lanterns. Residents are saying that they feel that they're not bright enough. And it's where I feed that back through to, because it might be a safety concern from a local level that we actually feel that they need to be brighter because of issues that have happened in the past. And also, they get used to a certain brightness, don't they? So I do understand that, but I'd like to know how we decide what's bright or what's not. I've lost my train of thought now. I'll come back to you when it comes back to me.
Yeah, the LEDs are actually brighter. It's just that they're more targeted. So whereas the other types of lights disseminate around, the LEDs are much more directional, which is why people do think, oh, it's not as bright, but actually they are. The lumen of them is higher than the normal ones that we use. And it's more targeted. But remembering that these are street lights, they're actually directed to what is needed to be. So it isn't just a general light up the area, which is also where the light pollution is reduced because it's targeted.
I'll just comment on that. I look at all the complaints that we get from residents, and actually we get a lot more complaints about them being too bright than them being too dim. We've had a lot more recently come through about them being dim, so it'd be interesting to know those local areas, because there might be something wrong with the specific batches that we're putting out. I'm not sure. You know, they're all of the areas that are upgraded, they are designed to the correct specifications. So yeah, and another point, with them being too dim, it might be because of the harsh dimming that we're doing on an evening, and that's just an energy cost saving. So yeah, it's what do you want? Do you want the saving, or do you want residents to feel safer? We have looked at the dimming, and we are quite comfortable with the amount that they're dimming, and we still think it's an adequate amount of lighting.
So if I may, so if we've put the new lighting in and we've dimmed it or set it to whatever requirements, who's checking that unit afterwards is correct and has been fitted and it's not a fault? Who's going in and checking afterwards that E.ON have done it correctly?
So there's an independent engineering certifier, and then one of our members of staff actually is going out at the moment. They've got a light meter and they check. But what I'd suggest is if you've got an area of particular concern, raise it with us and we'll go and check it and make sure it's correct.
Also on that, they have 3 yearly cyclic visits, so they do get visited and tested to make sure that everything's up and running and working as it should. And we also have monthly night patrols as well to check that everything's in light.
If I could ask one more. So if we get a street light that's out, do we have a service level agreement from E.ON and the time that they have to get out to respond to it?
Yes, but I don't know what it is. Sorry, I can get back to you on that though. Yeah, it might be 7 days, like Councillor Williams has just.
I would just say on that point, sometimes the issue isn't with the street light, it's with the electricity supply. So.
But if you do have one that's out, either the My Staff's app or the report, just don't know and then get it in there.
Thank you. Obviously, 2028, the contract ends. So where are we at with negotiating a new contract, and how are we going to manage the risks going forwards with that contract?
So we're just at the start of that journey at the moment. We're just in the process of setting up a working group. We'll need to review what contract models there are going forwards, what would be appropriate and suitable, and that's something we can bring back to the committee with some recommendations. But yeah, there's a lot of work. Although we're 4.5 years out, we need to be on with that now. So it's a significant asset, and there's a lot to prepare for the transition to a new contract.
Just to add to that, I'm a part of a group with the DFT, which is a PFI expiry group. So I'm collaborating with other authorities, and they're giving us advice on what we can do to help us for the end of the expiry. And as Tim mentioned, as part of the report, we had a review from the IPA, who are a governing body from the DFT, and they check us every so often to make sure that we're on track to expiry and completion, and they're really useful as well. So that there's been various different things that we've had to ask for advice for recently, and both the DFT and the IPA have been really good in helping us, haven't they?
And obviously, we're nearly there with the conversion. excuse me, to the LED conversion. When do you envisage that the whole of Staffordshire will be complete?
I think after phase 2, we'll have 19,000 assets left to complete. That's the tricky lot though. So it's subway lighting, it's the heritage lighting, bollards and sign lights. I can talk you through each category if you want me to. So subway lighting, at the moment there's the existing lighting is being made obsolete. There are alternative lamp sources for those, so there's not a huge priority to get the subway lighting upgraded. And it's not a great cost saving for us to be able to replace them. So as far as an investor save goes, it's not really viable because you're not going to get that saving back. And that's the same with sign lights. So all of our sign lights, we have got alternative lamp source available for those. So again, it's not a huge priority for us. The one thing that we are doing with the sign lights currently is we're looking, because some can be de-illuminated, so we're looking at that as a bit of an exercise currently, and about 50, we envisage about 50% of those will be able to be de-illuminated. Heritage lanterns, again, a lot of those will be able to get alternative lamp source for. The heritage lamps are going to cause us an absolute headache because we'll have to work with quite a lot of people to ensure that what we're doing is correct. What's the word? In councils, the heritage lamps and
Trouble.
I can't remember. Sorry, I can't remember what the name is. There's a specific team within that look after like the heritage stuff.
Yeah, don't worry.
Okay. So I think that I envisage that we'll have to spend we'll have to get some funding for those in the next few years. And then I can't remember what else there was. Bollards. Bollards, we aim to de-illuminate all of those to the wobbly ones, what are they called? The reflective ones, that's it. They, again, there's not a very good cost saving in those. So again, it's weighing up. Yes, there's a risk of having that electrical asset on the highway, and it is costing us in energy, but then the energy it's not that much. So we're not going to, as like the huge numbers that I'm showing you on the Investor Save phase 1 and 2, I'm not going to be able to give you those kind of figures on those. So it's all about we need to prioritise that and see where we can get the funding from for all those different categories.
Just as everybody said, I think the biggest part is the fact that the investor saves the main part and the crux of what we're going to do. There are obviously going to be options there for the smaller parts where we can look for funding, especially from the environmental funds that are out there, including the county councils, to say that actually it is the right thing to do because it is reducing carbon, it is reducing energy, but it is something where we are concentrating at the moment on the investor save because that is the main bulk, and anything else on that then obviously is going to be looked at for where we can get funding from. But it is something that we want to do right the way out. Again, I can only commend the fact that the work that's going on is really, really important, both for energy, the savings and the light pollution, but it's the right thing to do, and those savings should be able to be invested into other things.
And the springy bollards are much easier to repair because you just put a new spring in them. They still cost a lot. I'm sure the springs cost a lot, but not as much as lighting does. I was just going to say, and you're probably all going to laugh, and David will know that you and I have recently been to Egypt, not together, before anyone says. And in Egypt, they have solar panels on all of their lighting, probably because they have so much more sun than we do. So it's a shame that we live in a country where we have a lack of sun, because solar could actually electrify all of our street lighting. But we're never going to get there, so let's not go there. So any further comments or questions for the team? Philip?
Yeah, I just want to say thank you for all the work that you do. If I've had a problem in Utoxeter, it's been sorted out pretty quickly. We had a major problem on one of our roads where there was a short somewhere, and you persevered with it, and we actually found it and sorted it out. So I thank you on behalf of the residents of Utoxeter for the work that you've done for us. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Go On Records, guys, because, again, it's a massive piece of work. I'm sure the guy that goes out and inspects them all after he's fixed them must be a right bright spark. Boom, boom. So, anyway, we'll finish. And we've got 2 recommendations to consider and scrutinise the update of the contract, which we've done, and support the approach for procuring, awarding and entering into the electricity and associated services contract through Crown Commercial Services framework for the period of the 1st of April 2024 until the 31st of March 2028 with EDF Energy. Are we happy to move both of those recommendations? All in favour? Thank you very much. You're now free to go. We'll move swiftly on to the work programme. Jonathan.
Yeah, so the work programme, Chairman, you've had some help from Darryl in prioritising the long list of items that you've got identified for the March meeting, and you're just looking to the committee for approval to taking 3 items, HS2, cultural strategy, and the update on household waste recycling centres.
Everybody happy with those 3 items for the next meeting in February? Thank you very much.
March meeting,
March,
Chair.
sorry. Sorry, we're January now, aren't we? Yeah, February's different. Yeah, the next meeting is on the 2nd of February at 10 a.m. And I think that is us finished. We've got nothing in confidential, so there's no reason to exclude the public. So I thank you all for your attendance this afternoon, and I close the meeting at 3:38, I think. Thank you very much.
Very good.